Hello and welcome to the Homespun History Podcast with me, Anne Harper.
And me, Dr. Gavin Hughes.
Join us as we attempt to weave history and music together to tell the stories of the people, the places, and the landscapes that we love.
Well, Gavin, where are we today?
Well, today, Anne, we are high above the town of Hilltown at a place called Clonduff Old Church. It's a wonderful ruined site here, but it's beautiful views of which mountain?
We've got a really great view of Hen Mountain from here. Everything
Absolutely.
else is kind of covered in a sort of summery haze today. It's really warm, but
It is,
cloudy.
it's very muggy.
Yeah, so it's a lovely summer's afternoon. Or no, it's a lovely summer's morning.
Lovely morning. It feels like an afternoon. And if you hear anything of all the ambient noise of all the farm machinery, because of course at the moment they're cutting the grass
We're
and everything
actually quite
down
close
here.
to a busy road
We
here
are.
and coming in and out of Hilltown. But this site is, well, it's right beside the road, but it's been here for a long time, long before the cars.
Long before the cars, Anne. In fact, to be quite honest, even though we're right by a road, whenever the traffic dies down, you are back in the 17th century by when this church was first.
Yes, it's not
built
difficult
as
to
such.
imagine it.
No,
Once
not
this
at
car
all.
noise disappears, you see the rolling hills of Hilltown, and okay, there's a few more houses now than there used to be, but you still get that sense of how
Of
peaceful
absolute peaceful, quiet
it could have been.
perspective it is.
And also where we're standing, we were just talking on the way in. This ground is absolutely full of lemon sorrel. It's like in full bloom, and the whole place smells.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? It smells such a
sorrel.
wonderful kind of like some aroma of very fresh. And you come in here and don't usually get that in a graveyard at all, Anne.
no.
And yet you sort of come in here and it's a wave of it.
A really
And I've never
sharp-
had lemon sorrel until you gave me a
And
wee
it's
piece there.
everywhere.
Now it's
Yes,
everywhere.
delicious. Yes, you try it, but make sure you know what you're eating.
Yes, yes. There's a caveat, children. don't be just picking stuff off the ground and eating it.
I know,
But
so
no,
it's
it's
absolutely
wonderful.
lovely, and they're all feeding away on this obviously very nutritious soil here.
Absolutely, because of course outside the actual ruins of the church, we are in the graveyard, and we're actually recording this in the graveyard, right by the splayed window of the only remaining wall left of the church.
A very lonely wall standing. I wonder how long it stood by itself and how long it might still stand for. It's really difficult to guess. But so you were saying this is a 17th century
As
church.
far as I can remember, this is actually a 17th century church, which we believe is on a far earlier site, but it's been reconstituted maybe in the 17th and 18th century.
And later burials actually
And later
inside
burials, yes.
the church footprint itself. So
That's right.
19th century and further on. But we're actually just outside the gable wall of this church, and we're standing beside two really significant graves. Why did we decide to come here today?
Well, we no offence to John O'Neill, the Bishop of Down, whose grave we are also beside, but we're actually looking at the grave of Arthur Magennis. Captain
Now, lots of Arthur
Magennis.
Magennises, so
Lots
this is
of Arthur
Captain-
Magennises.
Captain Arthur. And why do we think this would be a good place to start?
Well, firstly, Anne, it's a lovely site to begin with, but secondly, because this gravestone in Clonduff, it holds a key to so many interesting things about Northern Irish and Irish history. First of all, lots of Arthur Magennises, as you say. This gravestone actually has the arms of the Magennis family on it. And it dates to the mid to early part of the 18th century, to about 1713, when his wife died, but his addition is in 1737. Now, you can't really read the inscription today. You could more or less 100 years
No,
or
but
so
we do
ago.
have a copy of the inscription.
We most certainly do.
It was recorded in the Ulster Journal of Archaeology in 1901.
That's right, by
but
Francis
it's also
Joseph
been
Bigger.
recorded in some other really interesting sources as well, as I discovered, and obviously it's on the Sites and Monuments records too. But it just says...
It says, "Here lieth the body of Captain Arthur Magennis, who departed this life on the 15th day, Anno Domini 1737, in the 50th year of his age. Here lieth the body of Mrs. Catherine Magennis, alias Hall, the wife of Captain Arthur Magennis of Cabra, who departed this life on the 12th day. And of 1713, I think that is, yes.
I think one of the most interesting things about this is I didn't realise, but this is the only place in the whole of the land that was once known as Iveagh where you can see the Magennis arms.
That's
that's what's so fascinating. And that's maybe why we decided to start our discussion here today. Sadly looking a little bit difficult to discern, but you can pick out some of the features. So what are we looking at?
Right, well, first of all, what we're looking at is, well, let's go straight in there. The red hand.
We've got a big red hand.
You can see the big red hand just there. I'm just sort of
and it's
pointing to it.
Interestingly enough, which hand is it? It's the right hand, isn't it?
It most certainly.
With the palm forward.
It is. It's the right hand.
And the roots of that emblem, well, who knows?
No, I mean, theoretically, you can trace it down to Walter de Burgh about the mid-13th century, but we don't know where he got it from. And we kind of believe that it was an ancient Celtic Gaelic sign, certainly tied to this part of Ulaid or Ulster, and actually associated by the power groups that controlled this area.
And very much became a symbol that they could almost fought over. You know, there was
Very
arguments about
so.
who's responsible or who has the best claim to this symbol.
Well,
and the reason that I find this interesting is that not a lot of people realise that the Magennis claimed and has a historical claim.
Has a very, very strong historical claim to
emblem,
this.
Yeah.
In fact, and you know all about this. The
well, no, they claim their descent from the hero of the Ulster cycles, Cuchulain's, not Cuchulain, but Cuchulain's foster brother, who was Conal Kiernan.
Yes.
And he was the person who avenged Cuchulain's death. And in fact, depending on which version of the story you read, he did it with one hand incapacitated, either because he tied it himself behind his back or perhaps because he was wounded. And then after he avenged Cuchulain's death, he left his blood-stained handprint on a standard or on a flag. And this is where they claim their right to use that emblem. But there was a lovely big poetic sort of argument about this.
That's right.
Where the O'Neills obviously had claimed the right to use the red hand on their...
That was this almost like a bardic contest.
Yes, it was.
There's a very good article by Gordon O'Ryan in the articles of the Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, where he goes into the discussion about the four quatrains regarding to the controversy of who controlled the red hand.
Who had the most legitimate claim to the heraldic symbol of the red hand.
And really, when it comes down to it, it was basically a poetical contest, which actually has
echoes. And why was it a poetical contest? This is really interesting.
This is very interesting, because to me that's exactly, although this is the late 17th century this happens, this to me has echoes of a far stronger Celtic past, and it's not simply a Gaelic past, and actually the battle suggests that this has repercussions outside Ireland. Now, they've talk about the Scots element with the McCullers, but actually I think this has got a far wider spread of that.
But why would you have a battle in poets? Why would a poet have a battle? What's the big deal with that? Because a lot of people might not be aware that
this is it. Why is this? What makes a poet and a bard so important?
Yeah.
Well, they're not simply the history and the record keepers of a particular ruler, but they also have legal standing in Gaelic and Celtic tradition.
Powerful figures.
Absolutely powerful figures. So if basically they're like your barrister and your historian all rolled in one.
And an artist.
And an artist,
let's
of course. Let's not. Yes, definitely not.
We've got the Magennis claim.
Yes.
And then the other claim that's discussed here in this article would have been the rebuttal, I guess, or the O'Neill, the counterclaim.
The counterclaim said basically you're talking a lot of rubbish, and the historical facts you're coming up with are rubbish. And where have we heard historians talk about things like that? What makes me laugh is there's a fantastic little bit here where, if I can just find this.
So this is the O'Neill claim that they're discussing?
Ah, yes, this is Owen's response. So this is the O'Neills kind of a bit far right back at you.
Oh, I love this, yes. Absolutely, yes.
Is it from the well of the three triads of women, at which all truly pure wisdom is imbibed, you did not drink a draught whereby knowledge is acquired. It has greatly increased your ignorance.
Oh, just so.
Oh, right,
fabulous,
Sue. Yeah,
fabulous
back at you.
down.
Back at
Absolutely.
you, you know.
Mic drop.
Yes, it is. But of course, Dermot's response, this is the other thing, was the Magennis counter thing was, you should not have delved deeply into the knowledge you did not receive with your mere table crumbs at the rear end of the order of poets without honour. You kind of think, oh, well, anything. Don't even attempt
yeah, I know, and they're
to come,
lofty.
They are so lofty. I don't know whether they'd be good company or absolutely insufferable to be with. It's sort of
Yes. Owen, son of Dermot MacBaird's response, since the noble schools of Ireland are not credited by you in any respect, assuage them with your trifling intellect and rouse your flock of outsiders.
See, now that's a very, very interesting thing. That really is a very interesting thing, Anne, because that's where you get the implication that they're drawing on the wealth of outside Gaelic scholarship. So basically maybe the Scots references as well to say to back up their claim to the Red Hand.
Right.
Whereas, of course, the Magennis claim is saying, no, we come straight back to the Magennises.
Isn't that
and
interesting? So they're claiming the
Ulster.
oldest
Yes, they are.
complete lineage.
Most certainly.
But the O'Neills are claiming...
They're claiming that effectively everybody knows this is an O'Neill thing.
So
now, they
fake news, it's fake.
fake news. No, the thing is, they have been using the Red Hand since the mid-14th century. But we know that Walter de Burgh incorporated the Red Hand onto his shield sign in the mid-13th century.
And of course there's the other myth of the Red Hand, which is that...
That's a mythical king, and of whoever touches the land of Ulster first, and he cuts his hand off.
Who was that? Was that the...
King Lugard, I think.
Okay, so
yes.
it's even older
mythological beginning to that.
That the hand was thrown. And it was the first person to touch the land.
Touch the land of Ulster. That's become. So all we know, and of course they're talking about in the sagas and the Gaelic histories themselves. They talk about various kings being kings who are red-handed, meaning that they are very brutal or very bold in warfare. They've got blood on their hands. And it's interesting that in this bardic competition, the origins of the Red Hand pretty much are all the same kind of thing, that it's the bloody imprint on the flag is the sign.
And it's still
it's still a very potent thing today.
It is, but yet its roots are I guess
right back.
Misty like the landscape around us today. It'd be very difficult to say which one was the original.
Which came first,
I know,
the
who
mist
actually owns
or
it.
the hill?
Clearly, Captain Arthur Magennis, who we'll talk about maybe in a minute, felt very strongly about this emblem and had it placed on his gravestone, or perhaps his family felt very strongly and had it placed on his gravestone. And so on the right hand side of this coat of arms, we've got the Magennis, we've got the Red Hand, and we've also got a lion.
We've got a lion which is also associated with the Magennis as well.
Yeah, and it's a symbol of loyalty and sovereignty almost.
That's right. Yeah. This is it, of power and of command.
And on the other side is his wife, Catherine Hall's symbology, which I don't fully understand.
I must admit, it sort of, whenever you look at the actual the drawing here, which is the actual kind of drawing that they did in 1901, it is fairly indistinct as well. Yeah. And as is, we think it might be. It looks to me like a wild boar at the top, yes. Which again is a symbol of power.
Yes, and we've got the helmet there, which denotes his being a military man. So he was based at Cabra, which is not far from here.
Very far away. Which direction would you say that's?
Over
by the Foxglove way.
That's right.
Yes, towards Foxglove Corner.
That's right. And Cabra, where he is noted as having been living in about 1711.
Yes.
And it's interesting that, from my point of view, that a lot of the history we've managed to find out about Captain Arthur Magennis, and I have to thank my friend Arlene Copeland as well for helping me with this, because she's the first person that ever brought me here, actually. His history has been very much recorded by harp enthusiasts to this day, and so I find it very interesting. Not only have we got the story of the Red Hand here, but this was a man who was very proud of his other I suppose you might call them Gaelic associations, but certainly he went out of his way, and he actually had a very important musical instrument made, and that was a really big deal. It was made by a famous maker.
Cormac,
the maker,
yes,
he made the famous downhill harp. And in fact, we've got a picture of this harp.
Again, wasn't that the watercolour
This is a beautiful watercolour made in the late 19th century that shows, and who knows, this harp could still be in existence somewhere. It shows a very detailed picture of the harp that was commissioned by Captain Arthur Magennis by Kelly. And Kelly, as I said, made the famous downhill harp. It's absolutely wonderful to hear a properly strung wire string harp played. That's a really magical sound. So it interests me that he had the emblem on his grave of the Red Hand and the lion, and he also went out of his way. He must have been a person who was very proud of his heritage.
Well, that's what I find fascinating about the Magennises, certainly in the 17th century, is it's almost, if they are not of Gaelic stock, they appear to be Cruithin, and traditionally are always associated with the Cruithin, but they adopt Gaelic practices, certainly by the 17th
They're such
century.
an interesting
and
family.
they adopt British practices as well. It's fascinating.
Yes, of course, Hugh Magennis, his ancestor, was described as the most civil of all the Irish.
That's right.
And I find them interesting because they wore many colours. They were obviously, they held the land for an extremely long time. They were well respected. They were very proud of their lineage and their sort of claim to go back to Conal Kernick and all of that. But they weren't necessarily straightforward in terms of their politics. That's
what's really intriguing, isn't it? Because I mean, you think when the Tudors come to power, the Magennises do very well. They're ennobled by King Henry, and as far as I can understand, during the Elizabethan period, they're not exactly sidelined.
They're playing the game.
They are playing the game, and I think that's what happens in the 17th century: is they choose the wrong side.
It's hard not to. I mean, it was
hard
such turbulent times.
And I think they have a bad experience in the 1640s, where they begin to lose control, and they see things slipping. And by the Williamite Wars, I think they choose James, because that's obviously the side that they feel more comfortable. The whole Gaelic bards, everything they feel comfortable with.
Yes, they associate themselves.
They associate themselves with that world. And a new world comes in that they don't associate themselves with. And unfortunately, they're on the losing side of that particular campaign.
And that was the end of this amazing sort of lineage. No, it's that whole period between Hugh, then Arthur, and then all of this money that they were expected to send, and the way they had to conduct themselves in order to retain their sort of status. And it ended up being a very, very heavy burden. And then, of course, in the 1640s, they turned the other direction and took part in the rebellion. And then later on, here we have Captain Arthur Magennis, and he, we think, according to as far as we can tell, may well have gone to France to serve, as many did, after the Treaty of Limerick, as a wild goose.
Yes, as a wild goose. And I think it's Brian Magennis who is, after the Treaty of Limerick, is given the commission to raise 500 Catholics for the service of Austria. And it's an absolute disaster. He goes there, basically embezzles the Emperor's money.
He was absolutely disgraced, wasn't he?
He does. He steals all the money which was meant for shoes for these poor soldiers going out to, and they all basically die of plague against the Turk.
But this chap seems to have done all right, and it looks like he went to France.
He did.
Possibly came back after that.
Yes. Arthur Magennis, he fights in the service of Louis XIV, like a number of the Magennises do, and I think he serves in a sub-regiment of Dillon's brigade. So basically a very, very famous wild geese regiment, and Arthur Magennis is pivotal in that.
And maybe we could just, for anybody who doesn't know what the wild geese were, how would you define that?
You would define them basically as an army in exile. Effectively what happens is the Jacobite Irish troops are given an honourable discharge, if you like, a chance to go on. As long as they go away, don't come back to Ireland, they can leave Ireland and they can go and seek their fortunes in Europe, fighting against William.
And,
it doesn't, they can do that.
It does appear that Captain Arthur Magennis wasn't badly off. He comes back, he buys, commissions this expensive harp. Kind of a very important statement being made there. I value not only the music, but the stories and the history that comes with the harp, because the harp was the way it was an accompaniment to telling stories, and I find that really interesting. So he's kind of a man after my own heart, really.
I know.
He appreciated both.
And can you imagine when this grave slab would have been, it was at first completed? It was definitely making a statement here. It would have been bright red.
Yep.
Bright red in this beautiful green landscape. Yes.
Is that deliberate?
I think it's a deliberate kind of nod. You know, he could have...
He's got a red hand.
Got a red hand. You know, this is again, is like, so if you go and where's Arthur Magennis? Oh, here he is.
So he's saying, I went away, but I've come back and I'm still here, and the standard's still here, and the red hand's still here, and we're still claiming it. And I'm still playing, I'm still having this wonderful instrument made so that we can retell the music and the stories of the tradition that I believe I'm part of.
I know.
And that's such a powerful statement to me. I really do think
it is. And when you look at the watercolour of the harp,
Isn't it gorgeous? Now, I know people won't be able to see this, but could you just describe what you're looking at?
Well, I'll be quite honest. Whenever I first saw the picture, I actually thought it was a picture of an artefact. So beautifully detailed.
Isn't it?
And I think it's quite a small original watercolour.
It's not big, but it's so
not.
detailed, and it tells us an awful lot. And what's really interesting for me as a sort of, as a musician, is that there was a letter written from one harper to another. It was written by George Petrie to his friend Eugene O'Curry. And it talks about Petrie viewing this harp in 1832, so he'd seen it himself.
He did, and he forgot to make. That's right, he forgot to make notes, didn't he?
He didn't make notes, and he was very, very cross at himself afterwards because the harp disappeared. However, this picture that we're looking at now was painted in 1889, so it was still around at the end of the 19th century. And I really hope somewhere somebody's got it safely tucked away. And what a shame that we can't really look at it, because it would be wonderful to make a replica of it. So in Petrie's letter, he describes what he saw, and he describes seeing, written in the Irish language as he describes it, the characters on parchment, which was under glass and on the soundboard. Now that's a big deal. If you add anything to a soundboard of a musical instrument, you affect how it sounds.
Yeah.
So clearly whatever was under that glass, and we do know what was written, or roughly what was written on it, was very important to the function of this instrument. So it wasn't just about making music, it was also about making a statement.
A statement.
And it says that it was the property of Art Magennis in the county of Down. It turns out that it was made in around 1711. Now this was the time of O'Carolan. In fact, O'Carolan died the year after Captain Arthur Magennis, so they're contemporaries. And this is such an interesting period for us, because this is really the first of the Irish music that we really have got in a tangible form. And what really excited me, and it was all a bit up the left the way it came around, was I had looked into some early music collections, early Irish tunes, and obviously everybody's aware of the Bunting collection of harp music that he made during the Belfast Harp Convention. But another sort of contemporary, published around the same time, was a volume of works published by a chap called John Mulholland, and he claimed that his works were based on collections that his father made during his 90-year life, which ended in 1770. So this chap had been collecting music up until 1770, probably around about the time when Captain Arthur Magennis was having his harp made. And one of the tunes that's in this book has the name The Wild Swan, and I actually arranged that a while ago. And then when I was thinking about this podcast, and I was thinking about the wild geese, and I was thinking about Arthur Magennis, I looked up to see, I wonder if there's any tunes written about the wild geese, and I found one that's called The Wild Geese. And so I looked at it and I played it, and I suddenly thought that's the same tune. That's the Wild Swan.
The same tune as Wild Swan.
So the Wild Swan music became known as the Wild Geese.
Well.
And I find that fascinating. Why did it change its name? Maybe it was a tune that was associated with these wild geese, like Captain Arthur. And so I thought it'd be nice to bring my harp and play the tune, because I think he might have known it. So this is the tune that was known in Mulholland's book as the Wild Swan, and then later became known as the Wild Geese. Obviously, over time, little things change, ornaments change, and so on. But more or less, it's unmistakably
it's almost the same tune.
I think that the tune itself is interesting. It's sad.
It is sad, and it actually, it sums up the kind of popular perception of the wild geese, doesn't it?
It was sad.
It's very sad. They're all gone, and they're all gone off to war and things, and campaigns, and most of them will never come home.
And the end of a sort of, I guess, a lineage.
Actually, this is it. It's actually almost like a punctuation mark, saying that this is the end of something.
John Mulholland describes how his father had collected these tunes up until 1770, but many of them were more ancient. He describes that these were not necessarily, some of them from O'Carolan's time, so the time of Arthur Magennis, but many more ancient than that. And so we have just 2 repositories of music, and one of them has this tune in it, which I will probably always associate now with Captain Arthur Magennis. And I just love the man. I just think that he was an interesting character. If he went out of his way to pay for a harp, then he's my kind of guy.
There are 2 things I noticed about this lovely watercolour. Now, the description of it, we see that there's an inscription. Now, on this, apparently everything in the Magennis harp is of finer quality than the downhill harp.
That's right.
Now, now, do you think Cormac O'Kelly basically was like sort of saying, Magennis it really is the person I'm constructing this harp for, so I'm going to make a really good harp. Well, the best harp, because this is the thing, isn't it? The inscription in Latin says this harp is the queen of music.
I absolutely love that. It just says the queen. Well, it's actually an inscription. It's a kind of a thing that he used before. He used this identification of the harp as the queen, but in this one, it's named as the one.
Queen. And the other one, isn't it? You may call me.
That's it.
The queen of music, and that could be a general kind, like generic thing of a harp being, it's the harp is a queen of music. This Magennis harp, called the Queen of Music,
is the most beautiful.
It is the most beautiful.
And wouldn't it have been something else to hear it? I mean, for me,
yes.
And I once went to, it was another Belfast Harp Convention, but it was before the lockdown, and I was lucky enough to listen to a replica of O'Carolan's harp, his own harp being played with wire strings. And initially I was unmoved. Initially I thought, I'm not really, I don't get this.
Yeah.
But after a few minutes of listening to this wire harp, I began to feel as though I just had a glass of whiskey.
Wow.
And as though the reverberations in the room were almost lulling you to sleep. And of course that is what famously Lou did at Tara. He lulled them all to sleep with his harp. And there's something about the wire-strung harp that's it is magical. And even the most simple tune can sound, because that sound carries and it continues, the vibrations in the room last. And so it's this very special thing. And he made this very special thing very specially.
Very specially. And what I find fascinating is that we're not really sure the very top of the harp. Now, what bit is this, would you call it?
I don't actually know. You see, I'm not really a harper. I'm a harper by name and I am a harper by practice, but I'm a clarinetist originally.
Yes.
So my interest in music is kind of multifaceted,
it blossomed as and when the instruments
arrived. Absolutely. And my problem was the clarinet didn't even appear in Ireland until the 1700s. So we have all of this music that we missed out on. So that's why I sort of what's the word? I jump on the bandwagon with the harpers.
Whenever we go down to Dublin and do Handel.
Oh no, that'll be a different story altogether. I've got a couple of nice old clarinets to show you.
Oh, very good. That'll be good.
But yes, this particular harp, as you say, was named I Am the Queen of Music, and the article that I'm quoting from here is on a website called The Wire-Strung Harp, and it's a fabulous article by a man called Michael Billingen. Actually taught us an awful lot about Arthur. So he had researched the harp, and in doing so, obviously the person who had commissioned the harp, and he says he must have been in a fairly comfortable financial position. So maybe he said to Kelly, I don't just want your bog standard harp here, I want the best harp.
Well, this is like the Ferrari of his day, isn't it? Well,
that's right.
That's it. I mean, it's a high status thing. He said, I don't want to. Yeah, he's got a high status gravestone. He says, I'm not after any old thing. I want the top notch. Give me your best.
Absolutely.
And he carves this wonderful little, this lovely
this
creature at the
head,
top.
The head of the harp. It has, like the downhill harp, it has a beast coming out of the front. So the bit that you would look at sort of at the front at the top of the harp has this amazing...
And now I'm not sure, but standing here by Arthur Magennis's grave and looking at the what was left of the armorial bearers...
Oh, yes.
I could convince myself it's a boar's head.
A what?
A boar's head.
Well, in Michael Billin's article, he describes this part of the harp, and he describes the head as being similar to that found on the downhill harp, with the shape, general aspect and manner in which the teeth and the open mouth are carved being virtually identical. It's not really clear what it might be. It could, he suggests, if it is intended to be a horse, it could be related to a
could be a
cavalry
horse,
connection.
yes.
It could be a dog or a fox. There are also possibilities. But as you say,
it could be a boar.
It's got a bit of a rounded nose as far as I look at it. So maybe it was some sort of boar.
And the more I look at it, Anne, you're going to laugh because it's me all over. I'm kind of thinking, I'm looking and seeing a carnix.
You're seeing what?
Carnix. Celtic war battle trumpet.
It look like the top of it, and that tongue, you know what was interesting about this one? It was movable. We don't know what it was made out of, but it would have shaken.
And whenever I think if you blew down a carnix, the tongue is supposed to move about a bit.
Well, I very much wonder, and of course we're not very far from Ardbryn.
No, we're not.
Where the Ardbryn horn was found, so
do you
clearly
reckon?
there is a long-standing connection of
do
trumpets.
You reckon?
I don't think the Ardbryn horn doesn't have a head on it.
No, it doesn't.
But
it doesn't.
But the trumpets were maybe
is it
in
a
the
nod?
mind somewhere.
Is it a nod to the old Celtic carnix kind of tradition? Oh,
and the harp's such a different,
trumpet.
that battle trumpet, or that very rousing sound that could be heard from miles around, compared to this very intimate, spellbinding, hypnotic
beguiling
sound.
music of a harp. Fantastic.
But if you want to tell somebody, if these days, if we want to revise for an exam, or if we want to maybe undergo some kind of hypnosis, we get ourselves into a very calm state. If I want you to remember my story, I want you to be nice and calm and relaxed and listening to my story. And maybe that was the whole magic of the harp. I love that you've raised the suggestion of because I knew it reminded me of something, and you're absolutely right, it does look similar to what you find at the top of some of these early trumpets.
Isn't it amazing?
It's a beautiful thing.
It's. I mean, actually, and this comes back down to the execution of the watercolor itself. It's so detailed that you could probably,
that was important to get that detail.
Which is probably just as well if the harp has gone missing now, but hopefully it hasn't.
I suspect it's in somebody's vault
Loft.
somewhere. Oh well, not necessarily a loft.
No,
I mean, it was obviously it was still around at the end of the 19th century. Is it likely that would have been destroyed in the next 100 years?
I don't think anybody would destroy that.
I think it's unlikely myself.
No, I mean, it's too beautiful to, even if somebody didn't know what it was, and nobody nobody could not see that as a harp.
Oh no, absolutely not. It's a stunning item, and people can go online and have a look for this picture. It's on the website, the Warstrong Harp. But yeah, the Magennis harp. And a legacy not only in the land here and on his own tombstone with his red hand, but also a musical legacy. Somebody who prized music at the centre of his cultural identity.
He did. Yes.
And that means a lot to me too. So thank you very much for your interest in this harp. It's really, I didn't know how you were going to take it.
I do like a bit of Enya.
And I think on that note, we'll just say goodbye. But what a lovely morning!
Indeed. And the sun is beginning to break out as well, Anne. So this is fantastic.
It's absolutely beautiful. We could go climb a hill, or we could go get a coffee and a bun for the milestone.
A bun. It is. Well, thank you for joining us on the Homespun History podcast.
We'll be back with another one before you know it. Thanks very much, Gavin.
Not at all, Anne. And thank you all for listening.
If you enjoyed the Homespun History podcast, don't forget to subscribe to receive alerts as new episodes become available. And you can follow Homespun History on Twitter @Homespun History. Thanks for listening.